And some of you may have noticed that recently our campaign and me personally have been the target of attacks from Trump and the Republican Party, because they are catching on that our campaign is the campaign that can and will defeat them. So expect to hear a whole lot of lies and distortions coming from Trump, his campaign, and the Republican Party, because they know what we know, is that we are going to expose the fact that when Trump talks about being a friend of working people, he is a liar and a fraud.
So what you just heard there was Bernie Sanders at an Iowa town hall, Newton, Iowa, talking about a phenomenon we've been covering on this channel, which is that Donald Trump and the Republicans have been giving increased attention and focus to Bernie Sanders over the past few days and weeks. And the reason this is happening is because the Bernie Sanders surge is undeniable. In national polls, he's vastly improving. In key early state polls, like the Des Moines Register Iowa poll, he's leading. In fundraising, he's dominating his opponents in total amounts raised, in total donations, and in total individual donors. On objective metrics, Bernie Sanders and his campaign are doing extremely well. It's still looking like he's in a statistical tie with Joe Biden when the national race is factored in, but the fact is that a few weeks ago, a few months ago, Joe Biden was in a much better position, and it's Bernie Sanders with all the momentum right now. The Republican Party, Donald Trump, they're adjusting to that reality, and they're not adjusting very well from my perspective. And the reason they're struggling with Bernie Sanders in a way they didn't with Clinton, or probably wouldn't with Joe Biden, is because Bernie's a very different candidate. He notes it in this clip. Donald Trump's path to victory in 2016 was all about this fake veneer of standing up for regular working class people, that it was the elite neoliberal Democrats that sold them out, and that only a populist like Donald Trump will go to the White House and fight for American workers, fight for the regular people, fight against the economic elite for the regular working class. Of course, that was 100% a lie, with one exception, which is that it was true that the neoliberal Democrats largely sold out the American working class. Now, the Republicans are even worse on that front, but when you're running a disingenuous campaign, and when Donald Trump had no political record to speak of, it was easy for him to launch attacks, and it was harder to hold him to a record he didn't have. Now, however, Trump has a record, and much of that record has actually attacked the poorest and most vulnerable Americans. But if he lines up against Biden, he'll run the same playbook again. He'll attack Biden, and not without accuracy, on anti-worker trade deals, on his attempted cuts to Social Security, on an Iraq war that sent working class people off into very dangerous situations, on bankruptcy laws that made it harder for working class people to dig out from debt, and on and on and on and on. And again, it does not matter that Trump is worst. Trump will still use that as an attack. But with Bernie Sanders, the game is different. Bernie Sanders is a dyed-in-the-wool working class champion. Not just now, not just 10 years ago, but for the course of many generations, Bernie has bared that standard of the working class, stood with them and for them, even when neoliberal politics were at their most popular. And almost every Democrat and every Republican was a proud and out neoliberal. And now Bernie Sanders is offering that challenge at a time where more and more Americans are willing to listen to somebody who's preaching a message that the economic and social and political elite need to be challenged, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, and Bernie Sanders is the one to do it. The right-wing populist attacks will not work against Bernie. You cannot go to Bernie and say, hey, look, this guy's just a Hollywood neoliberal, or a Washington neoliberal, or a big corporate Democrat. None of those attacks work against Bernie. And so the Republicans are scared. They're 100% scared of Bernie Sanders and what he represents. And this sort of bubbled up on Twitter today, where Bernie scored a knockout blow against Donald Trump. So Donald Trump basically tweeted that crazy Bernie Sanders is surging in the polls in the Democratic Party primary. He calls them the do-nothing party. And he wonders what this means. Stay tuned. Almost as if to say that, crazy Bernie Sanders, socialist Bernie Sanders, is starting to win in the Democratic Party, and that shows that that party is going in an even worse direction, and that, I'm going to stay the course, and that I'll keep you abreast of the situation. And all Bernie Sanders had to say in regards to what his surge meant is that it means Donald Trump is going to lose. It means you're going to lose. And it's 100% accurate. Again, if you look at the polls, Bernie Sanders isn't just doing well in the Democratic primary polls. He does really well in matchups against Trump. Now, to be fair, so does Joe Biden. But Joe Biden's record is tailor-made for a fake populist like Donald Trump to attack, whereas Bernie Sanders is tailor-made to attack a fake populist like Donald Trump. That's the key difference. Under hypothetical matchup polls, both Bernie and Biden, they do really well. You can see that. But the thing is, when that matchup happens, I know Joe Biden's skeletons are going to look awful to regular working class Americans of all backgrounds, of all walks of life. Everybody will find something to hate about Joe Biden. And even if they hate Trump, the risk, and I've noted this before, Donald Trump doesn't care if he demotivates a working class person into not voting. That's a win for him. Ideally, he wants that person to vote for him, but a no vote is pretty good for Republicans because Republicans win when people don't vote. When turnout is low, Republicans win. But the Democrats win when young people vote, when the diverse working class votes. That's when they find success. Joe Biden will lose too many of those people, just like Hillary Clinton did. I can't say this enough, guys, but Hillary Clinton lost in large part because a lot of people just didn't show up. Of course, the Electoral College is broken. Of course, Republican attacks on minority voters. All of that played a role. But fundamentally, she just didn't inspire people like Barack Obama did, and that's why she lost. And I see Joe Biden has maybe even worse than Hillary Clinton when it comes to inspiring voters, because there's not even the momentous history around supporting a very accomplished woman to be president. Right? It's two neoliberals, but at least Hillary had some history behind her. What's Joe Biden? He's nothing. He's nothing in that regard, and I just don't feel people are going to be inspired. Bernie will inspire people. Bernie will cut through Donald Trump's crap. Bernie Sanders will win this election for the presidency and win it for the Democratic Party and usher in a very progressive Congress and Senate in the process. And that's why Donald Trump is scared. Donald Trump knows he can beat Joe Biden. He knows he can beat Pete Buttigieg. He knows he can beat Elizabeth Warren. My view is that Donald Trump knows that if the Democrats pick Bernie Sanders, he's done. That's why they're scared. That's why they're scrambling. And that's why Bernie Sanders owned him on Twitter this afternoon.